Let's now bring in Beau Davidson, commentator and host of the Beau Davidson Show for more. Beau, really good to speak with you. Thank you so much for joining us. It's almost 6:15 a.m. where you are in the States. Let's start with Joe Biden's response to the attempted assassination. This is what the president said earlier.
Mr. President, do you think this was an assassination attempt?
I don't know enough to. I have an opinion, but I don't have any facts. So I want to make sure we have all the facts before I make any more comments. Thank you.
Are you worried? Beau, it's as if the president needed to take a nap first, have a think about whether this was an assassination attempt or not. I mean, it was past his bedtime when he held that brief press conference, brief statement. But why do you think he wouldn't just come out and say it?
Well, yeah, we know that he's not quick on the draw when it comes to responding to questions, but I would think the obvious could be stated that this was an assassination attempt on a former president and a current nominee. They blamed Trump for not responding quickly enough to January 6th, but this felt like an eternity to be able to respond to something that was so very obvious. And then he says that he has an opinion that he won't state. I think this kind of shows what you've insinuated, that it takes a long time for Joe to respond to things, and his handlers had to scramble to get him ready because he's just not camera ready. He's not ready to make a statement. Joe is not an improv guy. He's not an on-the-fly kind of guy. But, the last assassination attempt that wounded a president was 1981. That was the year that I was born, and that was against Ronald Reagan. There was also an attempt on Theodore Roosevelt in 1912. And, I've been thinking about this and processing it since last night, and there are kind of some similarities with these three men. They were men of and for their times.
Yeah, Beau, thanks for telling us you were born in 1981 and making certain members of this team feel very old. Hey, Donald Trump was treated in hospital after the attack, and then he flew to New Jersey, where he walked unaided from the aircraft. But I want to ask you, how will this assassination attempt affect Trump's campaign moving forward?
Well, I think it's symbolic. This is the attempted assassination of a former president and a current nominee that's likely to win. And you know what? As you've said earlier in the show, his detractors have tried to remove this man from office. They've tried to bankrupt this man. They have tried to jail this man and now kill this man. And what many have privately hoped for or thought came within a centimeter of actually happening. And that's something we've got to think about today. This is the threat to democracy they have been hinting at. And it's not coming from the right. It's not coming from Donald Trump supporters. It's coming from the left. That's the sad thing that we have to think about today. So I think this is only going to embolden his supporters. You look at that fist in the air, this image that you're showing right now, that is an image of strength. That is showing his positioning of how strong he is, his courage, his resolve. And I think Trump was already headed for victory, as we know, prior to this, because of that astoundingly terrible debate performance that Biden had. But I think that his supporters are going to even support him more now. They're going to come out in droves. He is a surefire winner.
Yeah, absolutely. As we said earlier, he's going to say, well, impeachment, arrest, conviction. Now I've been shot at, but hey, I've survived. I'm still standing. And that is the line we're going to see between now and November. Beau, we've seen a lot of inflammatory rhetoric from the Democrats. Joe Biden has been really pushing a dictator line. Now, if you were a nutter, you would take this as a call to arms to stop a dictator from running the country. How culpable are the Democrats and the left-wing media in this incident, in your view?
I think they're very culpable. And, first, I just want to say I think we're all grateful that President Trump is okay, but we cannot overlook the loss of human life. There is one person that we're aware of that's perished, two others critically injured. And, the fact that that bullet came that close to assassinating this man is, to me, it's a sign of our times. And I think the Democrats are culpable. You mentioned some of those Democrats who've said inflammatory things before, nothing short of Hitler. So again, what I said earlier, it's what some people have privately hoped for, but many people have actually voiced, that I think is really a reason for us today to take a step back and say, who is culpable in this? Let's not forget, as you played earlier, Joe Biden on a phone call to his donors just a few days ago said that they needed to put Trump in a bullseye. That emboldens people. And I think we have to ask a question. Was that an incitement to an assassination? I think it's a reasonable question to ask because, as you mentioned, nutters out there, people who don't need a lot of help in that department to go do something, think that they're on some sort of martyrdom mission. So I think they are culpable. And I think, as you saw some of his supporters last night point at the media and say, what have you guys been doing? for the last 8 years. It's not just the Democrats, it's the left-leaning media as well. So when you make statements like this that are nothing short of Hitler or even calling him Hitler, things like this are not outside the realm of reality.
Yeah, Beau, it's very early on Sunday morning where you are, but as Americans wake up, what do you expect the mood of the nation to be today? Is it going to be one of sadness, of anger? And secondly, does this event bring Americans together, or does this just serve to divide the country even more?
That's a great question. I think on his supporter side, the word I think of is resilience. This is about the existential fight for America. You may hate Donald Trump, you may hate his rhetoric, you may hate his tone, but he's a fighter. And he's a champion to many, many millions of people. And he said it before, they're not coming for me, they're coming for you. And if you think about it today, someone did lose their life because of this, just because of this existential threat to America that Trump is a champion for. The chants of USA immediately following the shooting are indicative of, I'd say, a spirit, an ethos, not to fight with our weapons or with our fists, but with our will. And, with that bullet coming within 1 centimeter of this president is symbolic because it's about someone who's leading a charge in this country and fighting for something. And the same was true, as I mentioned earlier, of Teddy Roosevelt and of Ronald Reagan. They're trying to kill not just a man, but an idea and a spirit. So what I think will come from this is a collective resilience. And I hope that Democrats and those left of President Trump can join in this collective spirit of resilience, because a threat to one of us is a threat to us all. And I think we've got to think about that and parse our partisan differences aside and say that we need to come together and realize that things like this cannot happen. There's no place for it. But I'm hoping, and I really do believe, that resilience is what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good point. Beau, just before we let you go, you mentioned this will now embolden Donald Trump's supporters, only embolden his campaign further. What does it mean on the other side? What does it mean for Joe Biden now?
I don't know how you respond to this, honestly. We mentioned how long it took him to respond. It's difficult because they put themselves in a catch-22. When you say the things about this man that you can't take them back. If you called him Hitler, if you called him a Nazi, if you called him a tyrant, if you called him a dictator, I don't know how you backtrack from this, because now it's like, oh, we're so sorry, we're glad he's okay. But look what you've done for the last 8 years. So if you're Biden's team, if you're Democrats, I think you probably just realized that Trump has won the election if he hadn't already. So I think it's a difficult spot that they put themselves in. But I also think that they did this to themselves, that I think it's a difficult spot that they willingly put themselves in, aided by the media, aided by the Hollywood left, who's now saying, oh, this wasn't the Joe Biden we knew. They've all been doing this for the past 8 years. So if you rally behind your candidate, tough candidate to rally behind, I don't know really what you do today. Because again, I'm hoping it's towards that spirit of resolve and resiliency. But I don't know what they do.
Yeah, well, I guess they don't have a lot of time to figure that one out, do they? Beau Davidson, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.